Welcome to the Next Level Human podcast. As a human, you have a job to do. In fact, you have 4 jobs: to earn and manage money, to attain and maintain health and fitness, to build and sustain personal relationships, to find meaning and make a difference. None of these jobs are taught in school, and that is what this podcast is designed to do. To educate us all on living our most fulfilled lives through the mastery of these 4 jobs. I'm your host, Dr. Jade Teta, and I believe we are here living this life for 3 reasons and 3 reasons only: to learn, to teach, and to love. In this podcast, I will be learning, teaching, and loving right along with you. I'm grateful to have your company. Here's to our next level. Okay, welcome to today's show, everyone. Today's topic is going to be, let's call it metabolic regulation or recuperation or recovery. Any of those terms will do. This is basically the process by which the metabolism recovers from strenuous activity. We're going to be focusing on exercise, obviously. And the reason why this is so important is because so many people get into a state where they are doing too much activity and not able to completely recover from that activity, reach back to a state of homeostasis, and then actually adapt and sort of become anabolic from that. I want to explain to you how this process essentially works and give you a model to understand why and how the metabolism functions as it recovers from exercise, to hopefully give those of us who are wanting to overdo exercise some more information about why that might not be the best idea. And so first, let's just start with definitions. Catabolism. Catabolic states are states that break down tissue. So anytime you're burning up energy or breaking down tissue, if you are burning fat from fat tissue, from fat cells, if that fat is being broken down in lipolysis and then burned through lipid oxidation, that is a catabolic process. Anytime you break down muscle to make use of its amino acids, that is a catabolic process. Anytime you use glycogen in the liver or the muscle, break it down for use as blood glucose, that is a catabolic process. And of course, when you do these things, whenever you exercise, you're not just using energy like, fat and protein and carbohydrate, but you're also, essentially using minerals. You're using vitamins. You're using other things up, the B vitamins, magnesium, zinc, potassium, sodium, etc. So the use of all these things and the loss of all these things is a catabolic process, a breaking down process. Now, homeostatic processes are all about being in balance. And so when you are homeostatic, you are in balance. And the whole job of the metabolism is to get you back to homeostasis or balance. One of the things that the metabolism does is it is more like a thermostat, and it has a very set temperature it likes to be at, right? So it's room temperature, 70, 72 degrees Fahrenheit. It tries to get you back to that room temperature state, to that balanced state. And that means something to the metabolism. To be able to get back to balance is a signal that says, okay, we're good. The threat is over. We can refocus now and sort of get ourselves back into a state to decide what to do next about the exercise, or how to maybe lay down resources that we may have to hopefully make us stronger and faster and better and leaner next time around. That is the homeostatic state. Now, the anabolic state is the building up process. This is the process of recovering glycogen stores in the liver and in the muscle. This is the process of laying down amino acids, assembling them into proteins and building them into muscle on the body, skeletal muscle on the body. This is the process of taking in amino acids and collagen peptides and things like that and laying them down in the ligaments and the tendons and the joints. This is the process of building up bone. This is the process of regenerating liver cells, etc. This, yes, is the process of restoring fat as well. And so this is a very building up process. So when you're anabolic, you're building things up. When you're catabolic, you're breaking things down. And when you're homeostatic, you're right in balance. Now, the catabolic process is a very reactive process. And what I mean by that is it's basically, you don't typically get catabolic unless you need energy, right? Unless you are pushing yourself to a degree and alarm bells are going off and the body's like, we need to do something here. We are without food for several hours. Let's be catabolic. We are under exercise. We need to be catabolic, right? So catabolic is very reactive. Alarms go off. The body is in homeostasis and then it senses, we need to use our resources. Basically rings the fire bell. All the metabolic processes go into order. You start burning fat, burning sugar, running these enzyme processes, using up vitamins and minerals, contracting muscle, perhaps using amino acids, etc. But it comes from a very sort of reactive sort of state. Now, anabolic is very different. Anabolic really comes from a sort of relaxed state, right? So this is where it gets kind of interesting because in order to go anabolic, you absolutely need a catabolic stimulus. You need some kind of stress or strain, some kind of trigger that makes the body sound the alarms and go catabolic first. Then, of course, you go back to homeostasis, and then you say, we don't want to, be in that state again, or we better prepare for that state. So let's build ourselves back up stronger. And so the reason I'm going through this is because when most people think about this process for the metabolism, how it recovers and restores itself, they definitely understand that the, difference between catabolic processes and anabolic processes, but we don't oftentimes understand the homeostatic process. And so I want to basically just give you that, sort of way of looking at this for now. So we can look at these almost as, three phases. Phase one being the reactive catabolic phase, very reactive, very breaking down, very sort of alarm phase. The passive homeostatic being phase two, and then the anabolic sort of proactive phase being phase three. And the reason I'm talking about these in phases is just because you can kind of see that I think the body has to go through these different phases in order to become anabolic and build up muscle, right? And that's part of what we're talking about here, but not just anabolic to build up muscle, but anabolic to recover and get stronger from your workouts. And this launches us into this discussion. If you are constantly in a catabolic reactive state because you're exercising all of the time, how likely do you think it's going to be that the body has any time to get back to homeostasis and then also has the time to say, okay, now let's muster our resources for anabolism? If you're doing the same things over and over and over again, day in and day out, can the body repair from that? Well, certainly you have nighttime every night where you're sleeping, which should be an anabolic process, and hopefully you're getting the nutrients in to essentially drive those anabolic processes. But what if you're not? What if every day you're putting out a little bit more in catabolism than you're recovering at night and eating in anabolism? And isn't this the very state of dieting? Eating less and exercising more. This is the state of dieting. Now, one of the reasons exercise becomes so critical whenever you're dieting, which dieting is putting you in a catabolic state by definition, isn't it? Taking in less calories than you need to survive means the body goes, okay, let's use my fat stores. Let's use my protein stores, aka muscle. Let's use my sugar stores, glycogen, to essentially deal with this sort of activity. So if you are constantly pushing yourself through low-calorie diets, that is a form of activity that the body has to do, isn't it? It's basically a form of mustering its energetic resources because it is not being provided those things. Now, obviously, this is a good thing if the only thing we were using was body fat, but we're not always just using body fat, right? We're also using up vitamins and minerals. We're also putting wear and tear on our ligaments and tendons and our joints. We are also using sort of skeletal muscle and things like that when we are going through this need for fuel, aren't we? Now, what exercise does, exercise is really interesting because what exercise does is it says, okay, I'm going to move the body, and moving the body is a stimulus that says, hey, we need this skeletal muscle. We need our muscle on our body if we're going to move. And this includes running and weight training, although weight training is much better at it. But any kind of movement of the body will tell the body, okay, if I'm going to be in a catabolic state, I don't really want to use my muscle as much as I want to use my fat and sugar stores because I need that muscle to move, right? So this explains why dieting alone, putting yourself in a catabolic state with dieting alone, can lead to up to 20% of weight loss in terms of lean mass, water, organ tissue, and muscle, most importantly, which can dramatically decrease your metabolic potential, your basal metabolic rate. This is why movement becomes so critical, right? But okay, so movement is one way to look at this, but what if you're moving a lot, which is sort of, holding the reins a little bit on this catabolic state, making sure that most of what you're burning is fat and sugar, but aren't you still using vitamins and minerals? Of course you are. So you need something other than just movement. You also need fuel, vitamins and minerals, and fuel as well to sort of balance this catabolic state further. And if you ever hope to gain muscle tissue, or you ever hope to get stronger and lay down stronger joints, you're going to need to balance this movement aspect of things with fuel. And this is one of the reasons why I talk an awful lot about the calorie gap of the different metabolic toggles. Now, for those of you who you're new to my work and you're new to this podcast, go back and listen to the podcast episode on metabolic toggles. I'll do a brief review here. The calorie gap between input and output is a stress on the metabolism. So if you're putting out a lot of calories and not taking them in, that's a stress. Or if you're taking in a lot of calories and not burning many, that's also a stress. What I just described there is the eat less, exercise more dieter model and the eat more, exercise less couch potato model. Both of those models are a little stressful on the system. One of those models puts you too far in catabolism, and the other of those models puts you way too far in sort of anabolism. In that catabolic, eat less, exercise more, you're burning up nutrients, vitamins, you're burning muscle, you're burning fat, you're burning carbohydrates. In that anabolic process, you're gaining fat, you're gaining muscle, you're gaining glucose storage, glycogen, and you're gaining vitamins and minerals. And the body does not really like to be in either one of those states for long. It wants to be in a more homeostatic state, a more balanced state. That means balancing this calorie gap a little bit. So we have two other models that we talk about, or that I talk about. The eat less, exercise less model, which is a model that mainly pushes calorie deficits through food reduction with minimal exercise and, of course, some movement, plenty of movement actually with walking. And then the eat more, exercise more model, which is primarily driving a calorie deficit through exercise, but also bringing food up to match that exercise so that you're not getting catabolic. Now, even with that EM, you may even be able to increase calories a little bit with this signal of exercise and gain muscle. And so the point that I'm trying to make here is that you don't want to be stressing out the metabolism for too long. You want to be able to balance catabolic and anabolic reactions, but mainly be living in this homeostatic passive state. So you want to think of this passive state as sort of like home base. And then every once in a while, you can sprint off to first base or sprint off to third base, right? So basically, home base is homeostatic, and then you can sprint off and be catabolic to first base, and you can sprint off and be anabolic to third base, but you always want to come back home. And this is what a lot of people are sort of missing in the way that they're looking at their exercise. So I want to go through these different phases. Let's go through an example to sort of drive this home. Let's say you go through a super tough metabolic conditioning workout, right? This thing lasts 40 minutes or so. You got your butt kicked. It's a combination of weights and cardio and gives you that breathless, burning, heavy, and heat effect, uses up a lot of your glycogen, puts your muscles under a lot of strain and stress, burns up a lot of calories. And you come out of that and you also decide, I'm going to, essentially, wait to see what happens sort of with my metabolism. Or maybe I'm going to fast. I'm not even going to have food. I'm going to fast. Well, what happens is in the phase one of this catabolic reaction, phase one of catabolism, what we don't understand is while you're exercising, yes, you're catabolic. But also in the recovery phase from exercise, you're still catabolic. And the reason why is because the body begins to muster all kinds of resources and continues to burn energy to bring your heart rate down, to bring your respiration down, to balance the acid-base balance in the body, to basically recirculate or clear lactic acid. It begins clear lactate. It begins to do a lot of things to bring you back to balance, trying to get you back to homeostasis. Well, that process of trying to get you back to homeostasis costs energy. Maybe some of you have heard the term EPOC, excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. This is a measure of the amount of energy that you will burn at rest in the post-exercise period, and basically is about this whole idea of recovering from the bout of stress or the bout of exercise in the first place. In other words, you use energy. It's not just all of a sudden you're burning calories and you immediately stop. There's sort of this sort of wave effect where the wave crashes during exercise, but then you sort of have the surf that sort of floats up and you basically have a little bit of extra energy. Some people call this an afterburn effect, but you definitely are still using energy. Only after that recovery phase do you begin the repair process. So in phase one catabolism, you kind of have the actual stress and you're using up all that energy. Then you have the immediate recovery from that stress. And then you have the repair process just beginning, which requires also some energy, right? Obviously, you're going to need, if you're going to repair things, you're going to need to have some energy. Think about, a chair that gets broken in a bar fight or something like that. Well, when the bar fight's over, that's the recovery, right? And then someone has to pick up the chair, set it on the counter, set up the different pieces. That's sort of the recovery phase, right? Gathering all the broken pieces together. Then they got to get nails and glue and stuff like that and begin, sort of repairing and putting the legs back on this chair and nailing the chair back together. This is basically all still a catabolic process, all sort of still using energy in the body. Once that sort of chair is sort of back to balance, then it can be put back under sort of the table and be set there. And this is phase two. Now it's just once again sitting. This is equivalent to you going home and essentially sitting on the couch and no longer exercising. And the body has had several hours to recover and repair. And now it's sort of back to restoration mode, right? It's back to restoring. Now, this restoration mode, when the metabolism is restored, that means really healing is complete. And that actually takes some energy, right? That's going to take you probably eating some food and getting some protein in and getting some carbs in and getting some energy back in. So if you don't eat, right, how likely are you to get back to this homeostatic state? Well, you might say, well, Jade, yes, I can. Can I use the fuel on my body? Can I use the body fat? Yes, you absolutely can. And can I use some of the nutrients that I ate from the day before, the B vitamins and all the minerals and stuff like that? Yes, you can, certainly. So yes, you can get back to homeostasis without eating. But what if you do this again and again and again, where you go through this catabolic process, you go through the recovery, you go through the beginning of the repair phase, you don't necessarily get enough fuel in to go into homeostasis, you just barely get into homeostasis, you don't have enough to sort of complete the healing, and then you do it all over again. And then you do that day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out. What do you think could begin to happen? Yes, wearing and tearing on the joints. Yes, body saying, hey, you better feed me. Hunger and energy and cravings go up. Yes, sort of this sleep becomes sort of fragmented. Your mood goes out of balance. The metabolism starts saying, hey, I am under too much stress. I need to get back to homeostasis. This is when you know you need to begin feeding the body again. You need to begin going through phase 2, homeostasis, which is a very restorative process where healing completes, but also a rebalancing process where energy is repleted. So let me say that again. In phase 2 homeostasis, you only get there if healing completes and energy is repleted. And for those who don't know the term replete, think about energy depletion. Well, you deplete your energy during a catabolic workout, right? You deplete energy during immediate recovery and repair from a workout during this catabolic phase. You replete your energy only when you get it back through food. You complete the healing only when you get the raw materials needed. And the reason that I'm saying this is that this is important for people to understand that before you can actually begin building tissue like muscle and stuff like that, you actually need to feed yourself enough to convince the body to go back to homeostasis, right? To go back to homeostasis. At that point, once the body reaches homeostasis, if it has extra energy and extra nutrients, then it can begin to recharge, actually gain more energy, right? Where it actually starts to, say, hey, maybe I need to build more glycogen stores and really, get my glycogen storage capacity better. And I need to reinforce sort of tissue building and remodeling to make my joints stronger and make me stronger as well, so that I can handle the next load. So phase 1, catabolic phase, is recovery and repair. This is where the threat is over and healing begins. Phase 2 is where you have restoration and rebalancing, where healing completes and energy is also repleted. And only then can you move into the proactive anabolic phase, where you recharge, where you actually give yourself excess energy and then reinforce, tissue model, and rebuild. This is very important. And so to use that chair analogy, the chair that gets broken in the bar fight, the recovery and repair process is gathering all the broken parts, putting them on, the counter, getting out the nails, getting out the glue, putting everything back together. The homeostatic part is sticking the chair back where it was and having it at rest. The anabolic part is saying, okay, there might be another bar fight. Maybe we need to reinforce the legs on this chair. Maybe I'm going to reinforce all 4 legs, or I'm going to reinforce the back and put extra nails in and that kind of thing, so that the next time the bar fight happens, we're not going to have this problem. And the reason I go through this is because a lot of people ask me all the time, they say, well, can you build muscle and burn fat at the same time? They are kind of 2 different things. You're kind of pulling at 2 different ends of the scale. But yes, you can do that. The way you do that is you must add weight training. Well, you must add movement to diet, primarily weight training. And you also have to have periods of time where you are regaining your homeostasis and also have enough energy to have this energy gain and reinforce and tissue build. This is why many people in the old bodybuilding days had splits where they would do, a training day on Monday, then a day off, a training day on Wednesday, then a day off, a training day on Friday, then 2 days off. We called that a 3-day split. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This is a great beginner resistance training program. Or a 4-day split. Workout Monday, workout Tuesday, take Wednesday off, workout Thursday, workout Friday, take Saturday and Sunday off. Or a 5-day split. Workout Monday through Friday and take the weekend off. Or a 6-day split where you work out 6 days a week and 1 day off. And as soon as you start getting into 6-day splits in the bodybuilding world, what they begin to do is they begin to break up the body parts so that they're not working every body part every single day, so that while you're working back and biceps on Tuesday, you're actually hopefully getting your chest and triceps that you worked on Monday back into that more anabolic state, or giving it a rest, at least getting them back to homeostasis. So now you might see part of the problem now when we start looking at mixed metabolic conditioning programs, where you're doing these crazy intense workouts that work all the muscle groups all the time without any days off. And then you can start to understand why oftentimes people run into this, what we quote, for lack of a better term, not a great term, but the quote metabolic damage. Metabolic dysfunction. Not only are we driving the nervous system crazy and the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal, thyroid, and gonadal, ovarian, and testicular axes crazy, but we're also not recouping the vitamins, the minerals, the energies we need to ever get anabolic again. And so we start to get stiff, and we start to get achy, and we start to have lots of different manifestations of sort of this term I use, schmeck going out of check. Schmeck, sleep, hunger, mood, energy, and cravings. Sleep is fragmented. Mood is off. Hunger is up. Energy is unpredictable and unstable. Cravings are through the roof. Exercise performance and exercise recovery is really difficult. Recovery, you stay sore and achy and your joints are feeling horrible. Performance, you don't really have the energy. You're fatigued all the time, right? And then you start getting into other issues with, menses and libido and erection issues, and all these other signs and symptoms pop off because you don't really understand what you need to be doing to sort of balance this catabolic, anabolic seesaw with this part in the middle of homeostasis and just chilling. And so what are ways to bring us back to homeostasis, which is what I wanted to sort of talk about. The ways that we can more likely keep ourselves in homeostasis or get ourselves back there more quickly is, instead of having huge calorie gaps, stay in these EL, eat less, exercise less, or EM, eat more, exercise more states. By the way, athletes do this. They eat more and exercise more. They do not eat less and exercise more. So they kind of get this sort of effect. And also, in addition to that, bring in rest and recovery sort of activities, things like mobility, sort of stuff, walking, foam rolling, contrast hydrotherapies, hot and cold therapies, all these things that sort of relax the system. Also, making sure we fuel our body appropriately, using things like, protein meal replacements, making sure we're getting adequate nutrients in, taking multiple vitamins and, things like that to help aid us to bring those sort of nutrients back on board. And then also learning to prioritize and periodize, which is the term we use in strength and conditioning, our workouts, so that when we are sort of in this state where we're working out like crazy, we can, not overdo it. And so this becomes pretty easy to do when you're just doing weight training and cardio, right? One of the easiest ways to do this is do your weight training on one day, your cardio on another day. If you're not going to do that, though, then you can begin doing these 3-day splits, 4-day splits, 5-day splits that I talk about, and then body part splits that I talked about. However, if you're one of these mixed conditioning athletes, like if you're doing a lot of CrossFit or a lot of boot camps or a lot of those kinds of things, you're going to have to look at things a little bit sort of differently. So I'll break that down for you real quick, and then we'll wrap it up here. To me, when you're doing mixed conditioning, I like to break it down into strength and stamina and suppleness. Sort of these three areas are really important. So strength is all about weight training. Stamina is all about aerobic sort of stuff. And suppleness would be all about recovery types of exercises. So from my perspective, when you're doing something like strength or stamina, what you want to kind of be thinking about is you want to be thinking about balancing those two. If you're just going to be doing lots of stamina stuff, you definitely are going to want to, every once in a while, put some pure weight training sessions in there to make sure your body is holding on to muscle. And you're also going to want to put some suppleness in there to make sure your body is getting this sort of relaxation response and its joints are sort of, being able to recover. The soft tissues are going to be able to recover. So if you're a mixed conditioning person, think stamina is all the stuff that gets you breathless. So this is that mixed metabolic conditioning. This is that interval training, sprint training, all of that kind of stuff. If you're doing lots of that stamina stuff, you want to balance it with strength stuff, and you want to balance it with suppleness stuff. So maybe you can do the strength stuff before the stamina, and then the suppleness stuff after. Even better, though, would be do strength on a day, stamina stuff on a day, and suppleness stuff on a day, and sort of repeat. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be working on skill-based stuff, too. That would be the other S, and I typically do skill stuff with sort of suppleness stuff. And you can work, so that way when you're doing lots of suppleness stuff, you can still work, but you're not being so catabolic when you do these sort of workouts, and this will essentially help. So just to review, if you want to take good care of your metabolism and your body, understand that you can't be catabolic all the time. And if you're not giving yourself adequate time to get back to homeostasis, you're not going to ever be able to get back to an anabolic state. You need to periodize your workouts effectively. You need to make sure you're balancing the calorie gap well. And if you're one of these individuals who is a mixed conditioning person, you need to look at this as sort of a split between stamina, strength, suppleness, and skill, and then break up and periodize things that way so you're not killing yourself in the gym constantly. Okay, I hope this is helpful for you, and I will see you at the next podcast.